Thank you. So, hello everybody, good morning, good afternoon for you who are in Europe. And so we will start with the first paper of this morning, paper by Christian Pineda on peculiarly qualified individuals. Christian, please.
Thank you. Okay, first of all, I want to say thank you everyone for being here. Of course, Professor Ricardo for organizing these wonderful workshops and for allowing me to participate. So what I'm going to present today basically is like an improved version of what I presented in the first workshop. I'm still trying to figure out some things, so it really helpful read any comment. I really appreciate it. So I'm going to start. Introduction. According to the Stoics, every natural body that composes the cosmos is a peculiarly qualified individual. What makes a body a peculiarly qualified individual is its possession of a peculiar quality, a unique and persistent property or set of properties that imparts a distinctive character to each body. Accordingly, the Stoics deny the possibility that numerically distinct bodies could be qualitatively identical. This principle applies to all natural bodies, from each human, animal, or plant to the cosmos itself, which the Stoics regarded as an ensouled being. This principle also applies to all inanimate natural bodies, thereby underscoring his radical scope. Each rock, egg, apple, or strand of hair is a peculiarly qualified individual. The Stoic theory of peculiarly qualified individual has long puzzled both ancient authors and contemporary scholars. One central issue is how the Stoics justify the claim that each body possesses a quality that distinguishes it from all others. Notably, the academics were quick to observe that some bodies appear qualitatively identical, like pigs or figs. For the Stoics, there must be compelling reasons to maintain that, despite appearance, God crafts a cosmos in which no two bodies share the same peculiar qualities. However, before this issue can be even tackled, a prior question must be addressed. What property count as peculiar qualities in the first place? This remains one of the most contentious points in Stoic ontology, with scholars proposing divergent candidates. The present work is devoted to this prior question. From the Stoic sources, we can establish three conditions that any candidate for a peculiar quality must satisfy. First, the persistent condition. A peculiar quality must be a property that a body retains throughout its entire existence, such that loss in it would entail the body ceasing to exist. Thus, being one method tall cannot be my nephew's peculiar quality, as he can lose it, for example by growing, without ceasing to exist. Second, the uniqueness condition. It must be a property that cannot be shared by more than one body. Thus, being human being cannot be Socrates' peculiar quality because Plato possesses it as well. Third, the identification condition. It must be an epistemically accessible property enable observers to discriminate a body from all others, thereby eliminating the possibility of confusion or mistaken identification. The main challenge in determining what kind of properties count as peculiar quality is that few, if any, candidates consistently satisfy all three conditions. Moreover, the only source that provides specific examples of peculiar qualities has been widely rejected as too problematic to reflect the authentic Stoic view. As a result, scholars remain divided over how the Stoics originally understood and articulated these three conditions. To address these interpretative challenges, I aim to reconstruct the Stoic theory of peculiarly qualified individuals by closely examining the problem it sought to address. In doing so, I clarify the philosophical motivations behind the three conditions and offer an alternative interpretation of the properties that count as peculiar qualities. The Stoics deployed their concept of peculiarly qualified individual and peculiar quality to address two academic challenges. The first concerns the epistemological problem of how to perceptually distinguish between distinct bodies that appear qualitatively identical, such as identical twins. In the first section, I argued that the Stoic response supports the link between perceptible properties and peculiar qualities. On this basis, I offer a reprisal of the Xippos' account in the second section. Here, I show that this account faces difficulties in explaining how peculiar qualities satisfy the persistent condition. To address this difficulty, the third section focuses on the academic challenge, the growing argument, which concerns the metaphysical problem of how a body can retain its identity through changes of growth and decay. A critical analysis of the Stoic solution to this problem provides insights into the difficulty of how peculiar qualities satisfy the persistent condition. Building on these insights, in the last section, I tentatively propose an alternative to the Xippos' account. So let's start with the first section, the problem of indistinguishable bodies. In Hellenistic epistemological debates, the academics targeted the Stoic concept of cognitive representation. For the Stoics, self-representation allowed their apprehension of external objects in a way that rules out the possibility of mistaken judgment. The academics challenged this claim, arguing that some cognitive representations don't secure infallible knowledge. They invoke cases of qualitatively identical objects, which are said to share all properties and thus produce indistinguishable cognitive representations. As a result, judgment based on this representation could be mistaken. For instance, a cognitive representation of Polus wouldn't allow me to infallibly judge that he is the person standing before me, since this representation could lead me to confuse him with his twin brother Castor. In response, the Stoics deployed the theory of peculiarly qualified individuals. They first rejected the possibility of qualitatively identical bodies. Hence, even highly similar bodies possess qualities that differentiate them from one another. Secondly, they claim that a representation must grasp the peculiar quality of its object to count as cognitive. Text 1. The Stoics hold that this representation is capable of precisely grasping objects and is stamped with other peculiarities in a craftsman-like way. For just as the seals on rings always stamp all their markings precisely on the wax, so those who have knowledge of objects should notice other peculiarities. This text indicates that a cognitive representation must grasp the peculiar quality of its object. Consequently, any representation that could lead to confusion is not genuinely cognitive. Even when two bodies appear nearly identical, their distinct peculiar qualities ensure that cognitive representation of them remain distinguishable. Thus, the Stoics defended the claim that judgments grounded in cognitive representations are infallible. To further strengthen their claim, the Stoics invoked cases of subjects with extensively trained discriminatory and identificatory abilities. While the academics appealed to cases of objects appearing nearly identical, the Stoics offer counterexamples featuring subjects who could reliably distinguish between such objects. Text 2. I don't agree with Democritus and reject him rather because of what is taught most clearly by the more sophisticated natural philosophers, that there are properties peculiar to each individual thing. Let us assume those early brothers of all, who were twins, were as similar as it is claimed? Do you really think that they were identical too? They were not recognized in public, but at home, not by strangers, but by their own family. Do we not see that is a familiar phenomenon, that those whom we never thought we could tell apart, we can with practice so easily tell apart that they don't appear similar to the slightest degree? Just as a mother is able to tell her twins apart, due to the experience of our eyes, so you will tell them apart once you have become adapted. Do you see how in the proverb X exhibit similarly with each other? Nonetheless, we gathered that on Delos, when it was still prosperous, there were people who used to breed lots of hens commercially. When they had examined an egg, they were all able to say which hen had laid it. This test begins when a direct reference to the Stoic theory of peculiarly qualified individuals, which underpins the analysis of two counterexamples. The first shows that while strangers may find it difficult to distinguish between identical twins, their mothers and relatives can readily distinguish them. The second concerns the exceptional ability of dairy and chicken farmers in telling apart seemingly identical eggs. In both cases, the Stoics maintained that such finely tuned discriminatory and identificatory abilities result from training. Without such training, one cannot grasp the peculiar qualities of highly similar bodies and hence cannot form cognitive representation of them. Against the academics, the Stoics thus contended that one's inability to distinguish between two bodies doesn't prove that they are qualitatively identical. In addressing the problem of indistinguishable bodies, the Stoics underscored the epistemological significance of their theory of peculiarly qualified individuals. This elucidates the philosophical rationale for the identification condition. Where peculiar quality is not epistemically accessible in principle, they would enable the identification and discrimination of bodies. Moreover, the remarkable degree to which such abilities can be finely tuned points to the presence of a peculiar quality in each body. Indeed, the very capacity to reliably distinguish nearly identical objects indicates not only that peculiar qualities are epistemically accessible, but also that they are unique. Thus, this fact also provides empirical evidence for the uniqueness condition. Although not conclusive, it undermines the academic evidence for the existence of qualitatively identical bodies. Finally, the Stoic response to the problem of distinguishing bodies yields a crucial insight. Perceptible bodily properties are among those constituting a body's peculiar quality. The examples indicate that these kind of properties underline both successful identification and misidentification. Although eggs and identical twins may appear qualitatively identical in terms of their perceptible bodily properties, trained observers can distinguish them by perceiving subtle difference in such properties. This lends support to the Xippos' widely rejected account, according to which perceptible physical traits such as hair color and nose shape constitute the properties that peculiarly qualify a body. Thus, the epistemological significance of the Stoic theory of peculiar qualified individuals warrants a reprisal of the Xippos' account. Second section, reappraisal of the Xippos testimony. Let us begin with the Xippos' testimony, the sole source providing examples of peculiar qualities. Text 3. But if a species is that which is predicated of a multiplicity of numerically different entities in the category of essence, in what way does one thing that is individual and one differ from another thing that is individual and one? For both the one and the other are numerically one. No, those who seek to solve this problem by reference to the peculiarly qualified individual, that is, by claiming that one, for instance, is distinguished by hogness of the nose, by blowness, or by some other concurrence of qualities, another by snubness, baldness, or grayness of the eyes, and again another by other qualities, don't seem to solve it properly. This test deals with the principle of individuation, the metaphysical basis underlying an entity's numerical distinctness from all others of the same species. The Stoic theory of peculiarly qualified individual is rejected as a candidate for this principle. In making this point, the Xipos portrays a conjunctive model of such theory that indicates that a body's peculiar quality is a concurrence of qualities, a distinctive set of qualities that belong to one body alone. The conjunctive model of peculiar qualities admits two interpretations. The first holds that a body's peculiar quality consists in a unique combination of common qualities, that is, qualities shared by more than one body. Thus, it is the combination as a whole that is unique, not the individual qualities. On this interpretation, two identical twins could hypothetically share all qualities except one. For example, Castor and Pollux might have identical eyes, noses, hair, and so on and so forth, with the sole distinction that Castor bears a tiny mole on his back. Consequently, Castor's concurrence of qualities is unique solely because of a single common quality, that is back moleness, absent from Pollux's concurrence of qualities. This interpretation raises some concerns. Since common qualities are shared across multiple bodies, it is doubtful whether any finite combination of these qualities can sufficiently establish what makes a body truly unique. Indeed, the principle of individuation risks being reduced to a mere incidental or trivial variation, such as the presence of a tiny mole, rather than being grounded in substantive differences. Furthermore, this interpretation fails to capture what is genuinely at stake when a trained perceiver identifies a body and distinguishes it from all others. Since it requires the entire set of common qualities that distinguish each body, it makes such epistemological tasks excessively demanding and inconsistent with everyday experience. Thus, the trained abilities to identify Castor and distinguishing him from Pollux will require grasping, beyond their shared common qualities, the subtle presence of a tiny mole on his back. The second interpretation avoids these concerns. It holds that a body's peculiar quality consists in a combination of unique qualities. Thus, each individual quality is itself unique, and the combination as a whole is consequently unique precisely because all of his constituents are unique. On this interpretation, since each quality possesses a degree of distinctness found in no other body, even identical twins could not share a single quality, while their qualities may closely resemble one another, so that their eyes, nose, hair, and so forth appear identical to an untrained perceiver. They are never truly identical in their finer details. This interpretation provides a robust basis for the principle of individuation, as it grounds a body's uniqueness on genuinely distinctive qualities rather than on incidental or trivial differences. Furthermore, it offers a more compelling account of the epistemological tasks of identification and discrimination, one that aligns with everyday experience. Indeed, a trained perceiver can identify Castor and distinguishing him from Pollux by grasping the distinctiveness of a limited subset of qualities. For example, grasping the subtle uniqueness of their facial features may be sufficient for this task. Consequently, it is not necessary to grasp the entire set of qualities that differentiate each body, as each quality inherently conveys the body's uniqueness. Overall, this second interpretation offers a more compelling account. A peculiar quality must therefore be understood as a combination of unique qualities. One must consequently avoid regarding each individual quality as a peculiar quality, for only the entire set of qualities is, strictly speaking, is peculiar quality. The previously quoted text 1 suggests the Stoics had another term for individual qualities, peculiarities. Thus, a body's peculiar quality is properly identified with the complete set of its peculiarities. However, by grasping a limited subset of these peculiarities in our cognitive representation, We can perceptually identify and discriminate a body as each peculiarity reflects the uniqueness of the entire set. In this interpretation, the Xippos' account of peculiar qualities meets both the uniqueness and identification conditions. Nevertheless, scholars have rightly noted that it fails to meet the persistent condition. The perceptible body qualities composing a body's peculiar quality don't seem to persist throughout his entire existence, especially those mentioned in the Xippos' account. The shape of the nose may be altered by an accident, or the nose might be entirely lost. Similarly, hair length and color vary over time. Thus, if a body's peculiar quality were identical with the complete set of its peculiarities, then any alteration in a single peculiarity would result in a different peculiar quality. As a result, the original body would cease to exist, giving rise instead to a numerically distinct body. Hence, the Xippos' conjunctive model cannot explain the persistence of peculiarly qualified individuals. To address this problem, scholars contended that the Xippos' testimony is not an accurate representation of the Stoic position. Moreover, the very idea that peculiar qualities can be analyzed in terms of perceptible qualities has been largely rejected, as not perceptible quality appears capable of being at once unique and persistent. Consequently, some alternative interpretations give precedence to the uniqueness and persistent condition, raising questions about the genuine relevance of the identification condition. Nevertheless, as shown above, the epistemological significance of the Stoic theory of peculiarly qualified individuals is undeniable. The way this theory sought to address the problem of indistinguishable bodies confirms that peculiar qualities must be related, in some way or other, to perceptible bodily qualities. This provides grounds for considering that Xippos' testimony may, at least in part, reflect the Stoic position. This opens the way to a reconsideration of how peculiar qualities, which include perceptible bodily qualities, are related to a body's peculiar quality. We must still maintain that peculiarities reflect a body uniqueness, as grasping them allows epistemological access to a body's peculiar quality. Nevertheless, I contend that the main problem lies in identifying a body's peculiar quality with the entire set of its peculiarities. Thus, a body's peculiar quality and his peculiarities must stand in a non-conjunctive relation, so that the peculiar quality cannot be reduced to the set of peculiarities. Crucially, this relation must allow a body's peculiar quality to persist despite changes in any of its peculiarities. This consideration leads us directly to the second challenge posed by the academics, the growing argument, which concerns how a body maintains its identity over time despite undergoing changes. Therefore, to elucidate the nature of this relation, I will examine how the Stoics drew on their theory of peculiarly qualified individuals to confront this challenge. The growing argument. First introduced by the playwright Epicharmus, the growing argument became a central issue in the debate between Stoics and academics. And its core is challenged the idea that a body can retain his identity over time while undergoing changes of growth and decay. In response, the Stoics deployed their theory of peculiarly qualified individuals to account for a body's persistence conditions. However, the academics contended that this solution entailed problematic implications, to which the Stoics replied with a counter-argument. This section focuses primarily on this dialectic, thereby highlighting the metaphysical significance of the Stoic theory of peculiarly qualified individuals. 3.1 The Stoic solution and his academic objection. Let us first examine the growing argument, which both Stoics and academics endorsed. The argument is a simple one, and these people, the Stoics, grant his premises. All particular substances are in flux and motion. releasing some things from themselves and receiving others which reach them from elsewhere. The number of quantities which these are added to or subtracted from don't remain the same but become different as the aforementioned arrivals and departures cause substance to be transformed. The prevailing convention is grown to call this a process of growth and decay. Rather, they should be called generation and destruction, since they transform the thing from what it is into something else. What's growing and diminishing are affections of a body, which serves as a substrate and persists. The argument establishes that all particular substances undergo a continuous process of change. Here, the notion of a particular substance denotes the discrete unit of matter that constitutes a body. The terms number and quantity refer to a body's material parts, the discrete units of matter into which a body's particular substance can be divided. Thus, the argument claims that a body's particular substance continually gains and loses parts, processes that correspond, according to our common conceptions, to growth and decay. The argument then highlights a further difficulty. Growth and decay require a body that persists as the substrate for these changes. The problem arises because the continuous gain and loss of material parts seems incompatible with the persistence of a body. Since a body's identity is grounded in the specific part it actually possesses, it retains its identity only if these parts remain unchanged over time. Thus, any gain or loss of parts will result in the body ceasing to exist, giving rise instead to a numerically distinct body. For this reason, these processes of part replacement changes must be regarded as generation and destruction rather than growth and decay. The paradox of the growing argument stems from a conflict between two conceptions of identity. The first maintains that a body retains its identity over time, even as its parts are continuously replaced through growth and decay. According to it, the child Socrates and the elderly Socrates remain numerically identical, even though their material parts have changed continuously over time. However, this conception conflicts with another conception concerning the relation between a body and its constituent parts. This second conception maintains that this is an identity relation. A body, taken as a whole, is identical to the sum of its material parts. Consequently, a body cannot retain its identity over time if any of its parts change. Thus, to defend one of these conceptions of identity, one must necessarily reject the other. The Stoic response to the growing argument aims to articulate a proposal that preserves both conceptions while avoiding contradiction. According to this solution, an individual body, such as Socrates, is not identical to the sum of his material parts. Rather, Socrates' particular substance, taken as the whole lump of matter he is made of, is identical to the sum of his material parts. Consequently, Socrates' particular substance doesn't remain numerically identical whenever any part changes, rendering perpetually in flux. Since Socrates himself is not identical to the sum of his material parts, he stands as something over and above his substance. Accordingly, the Stoics posit that Socrates is a peculiarly qualified individual. Thus, by possessing a peculiar quality that remains constant throughout his entire existence, Socrates preserved his identity over time despite the continuous changes in his underlying substance. Once more, the key issue is which quality persists across an individual's entire existence. To clarify this issue, we must turn to the academic criticism. When it is stated and proposed in some such way, what is the judgment of these champions of the evidence, these yardstick of our conception? That each of us is a pair of twins, two natures and double, not in the way that poets think of the Molienidae, legendary Siamese twins, joined in some parts but separated in others, but bodies sharing the same color, the same shade, the same weight, and the same place, yet nevertheless double even though no man previously has seen them. But these men, the Stoics alone, have seen this combination, this duplicity, this ambiguity, that each of us is two substrates. The one substance, the other a peculiarly qualified individual. And the one is always in flux and motion, neither growing nor diminishing nor remaining as it is at all, while the other remains and grows and diminishes and undergoes all the opposite affection to the first one, although it is his natural partner combined and fused with it, and nowhere providing sense perception with a grasp of the difference. Here, actually, they can perhaps be excused for inventing different kind of substrate. For there seems no other device available to people determined to save and protect the process of growth. The end of this passage indicates that the academics don't deny the persistence of body, but instead point out that any defense of it entails difficulties. Consequently, they argue that the Stoics, by upholding persistence, are compelled to endorse the problematic distinction between the peculiarly qualified individual and his substance. This distinction is problematic because it conflicts with a third conception of identity, which concerns the relation nowadays called the constitution relation between a particular body such as Socrates and the whole lump of matter he is made of. According to this conception, this is an identity relation, so that Socrates is nothing over and above his constituent matter. However, this conception is rejected by the Stoic distinction between the peculiarly qualified individual and his substance. This rejection, the academics argue, entails the problematic collocation of two numerically distinct bodies, Socrates and Socrates' substance. Since they are not numerically identical, they are two separate bodies occupying the same place at the same time. The primary objection academics raise against collocation stems from the principle now referred to as extensionality. Two bodies occupying the same place must share the same material parts and consequently the same qualities, for example, shape, color, weight. Accepting collocation thus leads us to the paradox that a single lump of matter could constitute two numerically distinct bodies. Additionally, the academics contend that no perceiver, however trained, can grasp the difference in each body between the peculiar qualified individual and his substance. Thus, based on the Stoic solution to the problem of indistinguishable bodies, the academics argue that the Stoic must concede that the peculiarly qualified individual is numerically identical to his underlying substance. 3.2, the Stoic reply to the academic criticism. The Stoic reply to this academic objection must prove that this is a genuine distinction. By clarifying the nature of the relation between the peculiarly qualified individual and his substance, the Stoics aim to defend this distinction in the following passage. Text 6. The substance neither grows nor diminishes through addition or subtraction, but simply alters, just as in the case of numbers and measures. And it follows that it is in the case of peculiarly qualified individuals, such as dion and theon, that processes of growth and decay and diminution arise. Therefore, each individual's quality actually remains from his generation to his destruction. In the case of destructible animals, plants, and the like. In the case of peculiarly qualified individuals, they say that there are two receptive parts, the one pertaining to the presence of the substance, the other to that of the qualified individual. For it is the latter, as we have said several times, that is receptive of growth and diminution. The peculiarly qualified thing is not the same as his constituent substance, nor on the other hand, it is different from it, but is merely not the same, in that the substance both is a part of it and occupies the same place as it, whereas whatever is called different from something must be separated from it and not be thought of as even a part of it. This passage relies on Stoic methodology, where a part is understood as neither numerically identical with the whole nor numerically distinct from it. For numerical distinctness requires that two bodies be wholly separate and thus not stand in a whole-part relation. Accordingly, Stoics maintain that the peculiar qualified individual possesses his particular substance as one of his parts, which means that they are not numerically distinct bodies. Moreover, since the peculiarly qualified possesses his substance as one of his parts, they are entirely coextensive. They occupy the same location as they share the same material parts and with them the same qualities. However, it is noteworthy that this case differs from ordinary whole-part relation, where no part is completely coextensive with the whole, for example, a finger with a hand. This sui generis part-whole relation is key to the Stoic response to the growing argument, since it argues that while his particular substance is numerically identical to the sum of his material parts, the peculiar qualified individual is not. Arguably, this results from the peculiar qualified individual possessing, beyond his substance, an additional non-material part. At any rate, this indicates that the Stoics are distinguishing logical parts in this context. Interestingly, Texas shows that where one might expect an incorporeal form separate from the allomorphic composite, the Stoics claim that the other part is the peculiarly qualified individual itself. Since the peculiar qualified individual already includes his substance as one of his parts, these are not two coordinate or independent parts. Instead, the distinction between logical parts articulate an ordered hierarchy of metaphysical levels within each particular body. A particular body such as Socrates can therefore be analyzed as constituted by two logical parts, or more precisely, two hierarchical metaphysical levels. The first level corresponds to the whole substance, encompassing all his material parts. Although the substance of a particular body invariably appears qualified, it remains devoid of any intrinsic qualitative determination. The second part corresponds to the peculiarly qualified individual, in which the whole substance is taken as endowed with an intrinsic peculiar quality. This constitutes a qualitative principle of individuation, which not only confers the body distinctive character, but also enables it to persist through part replacement changes in his substance. In this way, each particular body exhibits a layered metaphysical structure which accounts for how his substance and peculiar qualification interrelate without collapsing into one another. Insights from Stoic pneumatology can further illuminate this layered structure. According to this theory, a particular body results from the blending of two bodies, pneuma, an active body composed from the active elements, fire and air, and a passive body composed from the passive elements, water and earth. Within this blending, pneuma is in a continuous state of internal tension, which takes the form of a simultaneous inward and outward motion. The inward motion causes the material unification of the body, bringing together his material parts into the discrete unit of matter that constitutes his whole substance. The outward motion causes the qualitative individuation of the body, conferring a particular qualification upon his entire substance, such that every part inherently conveys the body's distinctive character. Thus, this tensile motion constitutes the physical basis for the layered metaphysical structure of bodies. The layered metaphysical structure of bodies then result from the action of pneuma upon the whole substance, encompassing both the watery earthy substance of the passive body and the pneuma's own airy fairy substance. This shows that the two metaphysical layers cannot be mapped directly onto the two constituent bodies of the blending. Rather, the structure cut across the physical makeup of bodies. On this basis, we can also understand why the Stoics resisted construing the peculiar quality as a non-material component within the metaphysical structure of bodies. Consistent with their corporealism, they maintain that the peculiar quality is nothing over and above pneuma itself, since pneuma is the very cause of a body peculiarly qualified. Thus, the peculiar quality is itself a body materially constituted by pneuma's substance and must therefore be included within the first metaphysical level. At the same time, because pneuma's substance is also qualified, the peculiar quality is implicated in the second level as well. This confirms that the layered metaphysical structure of body cut across their physical makeup, and it must instead be explained in terms of the tensile motion of pneuma upon the whole substance. Insights from Stoic methodology can further illuminate this view. According to the Stoics, a particular body, considered as a whole, is not merely an aggregation of material parts. Rather, the whole integrates its parts into a coherent, organized structure. This view aligns with the response to the growing argument, since the peculiarly qualified individual is taken as not merely identical to the sum of his material parts. Accordingly, through the action of the pneuma on the whole substance, a peculiarly qualified individual comes to possess his material parts in a arranged and coordinated manner, forming what can be understood as a qualitatively structured whole. This structure is what causes every material part to bear a peculiarity that inherently conveys the body's distinctive character. Accordingly, a body's peculiar quality should be understood in terms of this qualitative structure, which must be conceived not in isolation, but embedded in the body's whole substance. Having set out this distinction, we can address the central questions of how a body's peculiar quality persists through his entire existence. A body's peculiar quality is the qualitative structure that makes the whole substance to be peculiarly qualified. Thus, Socrates' nose, eyes, hands, and the rest of his part possesses a peculiarity found in no other body. Even if Socrates loses some of these parts, his peculiar qualitative structure remains. For example, when Socrates loses all his hair, the resulting baldness remains a peculiarity of him. Likewise, when he gains a new part, for example, a mole on his back, it is integrated into his qualitative structure, taking on Socrates' peculiarity. For these reasons, a peculiarly qualified individual retains his identity over time, despite continuous changes in his substance, while identity grounded not in a single peculiarity, but in the persistent qualitative structure that peculiarly qualifies the whole. So, let's make the concluding remarks. Drawing on the insights from the previous section, I tentatively propose an alternative to the hypothesis conjunctive model. As previously noted, identifying a peculiar quality with a set of peculiarities is untenable because, since peculiarities are subject to continuous change, the peculiar quality will also be changeable. This not only contradicts the Stoic view that a body's peculiar quality remains constant throughout his entire existence, but also as a consequence entails that it couldn't retain his identity over time. Therefore, a quality cannot be reduced to a mere set of peculiarities. As the preceding discussion shows, the order of priority is reversed. It's the body's peculiar quality that confers peculiarity upon each of its properties. Thus, it's precisely because Socrates possesses a peculiar qualitative structure that his nose, hair, eyes, and the full array of his parts manifests peculiarity. Being prior, Socrates' peculiar quality remains unchanged, thereby render any property he ever possessed, whether enduring or fleeting, one of his peculiarities. As a peculiar quality cannot be broken down into individual qualities, it must be treated as a primitive, unanalyzable, qualitative aspect of a body. Thus, Socrates' peculiar quality corresponds to what may be described as his intrinsic Socrarity. This aligns with Stoic semantics, which assigns proper names such as Socrates the role of revealing a body's peculiar quality. Despite this, we can attain epistemic access to a body's peculiar quality, but perceptually grasping his peculiarities, each of which immediately manifests his distinctive character. This primitive character explains our ability to identify and discriminate a peculiarly qualified individual, even when their proper peculiarities change, without being able to precisely articulate the basis of that knowledge. Thus, by perceptually grasping Socrates' peculiarities, we come to be acquainted with what may be called his intrinsic Socrarity. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Very well. Any questions? Preguntas? Sí, por favor.
Maybe it's not exactly a question. I just want to express my discomfort, I guess, with the way you address this idea of Socrates having throughout time new characteristics, like going bold, and how you say that the boldness now is a new peculiarity that is, might say, absorbed into the structure of all the peculiarities. And so if he gets a mole, or if he uses a nose, or whatever happens to the parts of Socrates, that change is in a way just absorbed into the original or the overarching structure. So I like the idea of the structure for this characterization of what a peculiar quality is. I just find it odd to say that that structure gets new or integrates new qualities and yet remains the same. And I find that idea conflicting with the thesis that you resume in the concluding remarks, that the quality remains constant throughout the existence of the thing. So I was just wondering whether it could be a possible path for this, to say, for instance, that those changes in Socrates simply do not alter the structure at all. So Socrates can go bold, but that does not affect the structure, meaning that you can have the structure and in a way acknowledge that there is a missing part. So now Socrates is gone bold, but you can actually notice that there is this missing part precisely because there is a structure. And by the same token, if there is anything added to the individual, like if I get a mole, as you say, you can notice that there is this new part that is extra, or that it is being added to the individual, but that it actually does not, it's not part of the original structure. And so that's how you can tell that it's been added, because it's not part of the structure. So all the changes, it's throughout time actually do not affect at all the structure. Could that be possible?
I think that the concern here, or the main concern, is how can we combine that suggestion with all the epistemological dimensions, saying that you can look in the eyes of the person, their peculiarity, or by looking at their face you can see the difference. So it must be a relationship in some way or another. And the only way that I think that this relation could be is that qualitative structure that remains is in somehow making each part peculiar. That's the difficult part, to make the combination of the epistemological fact that we can have the perceptual access to this structure, with the idea of an structure being there. Most of the solution is saying, no, forget the epistemological part, it's not that important, but I'm saying, no, that's what I'm trying to do here, to show that the epistemological part is relevant and we must take it at face value. And that's why.
I see.
That's why.
I see. Thank you.
Thank you.
Or, any more questions?
So, there's no more question. May I have a second comment?
Yes.
Well, then I do have a question about this. In section, I think it was section number 2, when you're analyzing the difference between the specific qualities and individual qualities, and then you say, well, we must not confuse them or mistake them for the peculiar qualities. So one thing is the individual quality, like the shape of the nose and so on and so forth, and then you want to say those are not peculiar qualities. And then you also want to say, towards page number 8, you want to say we can also, we need also to avoid reading that any of these individual qualities can be a peculiar quality. And I'm not quite sure I understand how we can avoid that mistake or that confusion because of this. So starting by the example of the identical twins, when analyzing the individual qualities, you say, well, it's not like the eyes are exactly the same between Castor and Polis. It's not like the nose is exactly the same. They're very similar, but they're not quite the same. So these individual qualities, regardless of their tight similarity, they are individual nonetheless. And so that makes me question, and how can I avoid just jumping into the conclusion that these individual qualities are peculiar? I understand that you want to say, no, for it to be peculiar, we need the whole set of individual qualities. But I just take that as an unrequited condition. So if the individual quality is different from the other, why is it not enough?
Right. This point has to do with what seems to be a common interpretation of this passage, which is not that each quality is unique, but what makes unique a body is the unique possession of common qualities. That's why I say it might be, in this case, that the identical twin must share the same qualities, just one little tiny more making the difference. So what I'm trying to say is I don't think that this is the correct way to understand the passage, saying there are common qualities which, because they are common, they are shared by more than one individual, but what makes them unique is the whole set. Because when one member of the set being different, the whole set is different, right? But what I'm trying to say in this part is, well, we must better understand each quality, not common, but each quality itself being peculiar. I mean, I'm okay with saying that. What I'm not okay is equating the concept of peculiar quality itself, that concept, as individual. This ice is your peculiar quality. No, it's the whole. What is your peculiar quality? So I find this notion of peculiarities, another expression the estoy use, axiomata, digo, idiomata instead of idiapoietes, as a way to say, well, these individuals are peculiarities. Let's call it like that, not equating this with the peculiar quality, which might be the whole set. Yes.
Well, we have two questions. One by Vanessa. Vanessa, hello, Vanessa.
Hola, gracias. I was going to ask if you want to, I was going to suggest, if you want to argue against the gives good reason to reject an aggregate notion of syndrome. And so I think you could lean on that as a way also to just argue against the conjunctive model and in favor of seeking an alternative.
How, I mean, in which sense the rest of the
what Dexippus says afterwards, so typically people end with, and I don't like your solution. But then he does explain afterward that that he would be happier if the Stoics did give an aggregate, but in fact they're giving a purely qualitative account rather than an aggregate. So I can send you the information if you want, but I think that there are reasons within Dexippus to doubt that the conjunctive model is correct, and I think that works in your favor.
Thank you very much.
Jean-Baptiste Gourina.
Yes, I'm puzzled because I don't, after hearing what Vanessa says, because I don't know, what is there in Dexippus afterwards, but because what I was wondering is how your solution, which is, I don't, I think it's pertinent, but I have a problem with what Dexippus says, because actually, sorry, I'm looking for the text in your handout, precisely because Dexippus seem to reject the syndrome of poieteton, and they say that as a critic of the Stoics, that it is not the concurrence of qualities which makes them different numerically, but if anything, quality as such. And so I was wondering what would be the difference between what Dexippus presents here, but maybe so not, and in what follows. So I don't. I would rely on maybe so Vanessa could give more explanations about that. But if we take what is here literally, I wonder what is the difference between what Dexippus presents as a criticism of the Stoics, namely it's not a syndrome poioteton, but it's quality itself, and your own position, in the sense that I have the impression that the position you attribute to the Stoics is the position that Dexippus opposes to the Stoics. So I would like you to explain that, explain a little more in what sense your position is different from this position of Dexippus. So it seems correct to me, but I don't understand the difference between your position and Dexippus' position. So if you could be more specific about that.
Thank you. Yeah, I agree with the suggestion that Vanessa made, which is in the passage itself. Dexippus argue or says, after saying that it's a syndrome of qualities, then he said, well, that's not correct. If it is correct to some extent, it might be just quality, not the syndrome of qualities. So I think that the notion of quality there, I mean, the remark of Dexippus saying that if any, is the idea of quality, not the idea of a concurrence of qualities that makes a body individual. So the difference is that according to the idea of the concurrence of quality syndrome and poieteton, is that what makes a peculiar quality is a unique set of qualities, a unique combination of qualities that each body possesses. So one body is different from another because it has a combination of many qualities. And I see this problematic because it implies that if you change one quality of the set, the quality is now different. And if this is the principle of individuation, any change of any of the members of the set, each individual quality, if one of these qualities changes, the whole set change, and for that reason, in this conjunctive model, on this idea of concurrence of qualities, cannot be, I think, the right answer because it cannot solve the problem of persistence. So then when the Dexippus himself says that he doesn't accept the idea of it's a concurrence of quality, but quality itself, I think that it could be a reason to say that Dexippus is rejecting the conjunctive model, as I call it, and instead of that, proposing the idea that might be similar to the one that I defended, that is a single qualitative character, so to speak, not individual qualities in a set, just one quality. That's how I see the difference between these ideas.
If I may specify my question, the problem is if Dexippus is criticizing the syndrome poioteton, in principle, it should be the Stoic theory. You see, so he is criticizing the syndrome poioteton with a theory of that the good explanation would be quality, but this implies that it is not the Stoic theory. So, and that the Stoic theory is the theory of the syndrome poioteton. You see why I'm embarrassed. So because if he criticizes the Stoics for endorsing the syndrome poioteton, it's difficult to say that, well, that's not the Stoic position. Even if I think you must be right, but I can't understand in that case why Dexippus is criticizing this view of the syndrome poioteton. So, do you have any views about that? About that?
Yes, the point is that this is not the idea of quality. This is not the view that disciples at the end of the day endorse. So, in the whole passage, disciples first presented this idea of syndrome poieteton, and then he rejected by saying, "Well, I'm not sure about this option. Maybe if it is right, it's because of quality, not because of syndrome of qualities." But that's not the Xipus position, because after that he presents something different, like saying that what makes a body different from others is not quality at all, but just being separate, being different bodies, so to speak, numerically distinctive. That's the view that disciples ended up defending at the end. So rejecting any relevance of quality, either understood as the syndrome or as understood as a one single quality, that's not the position that the disciples defend at the end. He defends something else which has to do with being numerically distinct is enough. Being two separate entities is what counts for the principle of individuation. Quality doesn't make any relevance here, or is not relevant at all.
Okay, it's more clear now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, David. David Sedley.
Yes, thank you. I'm very convinced by the arguments against the syndrome, because it's made particularly difficult by the fact that whatever the quality that individuates somebody is theirs from birth. But I wonder if we need to think harder about the what the Stoics might have in mind when they talk about equality here. I mean, we're probably not talking about color of skin, hair or bald, a standard example of properties. Maybe I'm just wondering, maybe the Stoics have in mind something like one's unique state of consciousness. Everybody, I mean, I might well feel that there's nobody else in the world who feels like it feels to be me. And you might say, well, you know, I've never, among all the people I've never met anybody who I confuse with myself. And there's something maybe wrong with the logic of this, the use of the first person. But would you think that if supposing I were trying to say that there's a unique self-consciousness found in at least in every human being, and probably in other animals, that it wouldn't solve the problem about recognize every individual being recognizable, because we don't have access to each other's self-consciousness in the right way. But it does see. I can't see why that feeling of what it is like to be me should not be called a poietes in Stoicism, and I wonder if that would be intuitively. I mean, the theory they give us is so implausible that you could never find to qualitatively identical individuals. But I'm just suggesting that the self-consciousness instinct or intuition would actually have much more plausibility. Do they say anything that contradicts that?
Professor, for your suggestion. What I find problematic of that suggestion is how this could be applied to anybody, even eggs or plants, because sorry?
The suggestion would be to deal with the auxonomenos logos, the growing argument. That's what self-consciousness, a continuous self-consciousness throughout your life is what makes you the individual you are. It wouldn't address the problem about indistinguishable individuals, the epistemological problem. But we have no evidence at all, as far as I can think, that the Stoics connected the theory of the peculiar quality with the epistemic question. Or do you think there is any? I mean, it's very plausible that they should have gone together, but maybe they're quite independent theories.
Well, the evidence that I think we have has to do with the academic debate between the Stoics and the academic skeptics. And in this debate, which is actually in my text too, there is a direct reference to the idea of peculiar qualities, of the idea of each body has a peculiar quality, and this view is presented as the basis for the Stoic response against the problem of indistinguishable bodies. Since this direct allusion appears in the discussion, and that's what I think that peculiar qualities in some way, which is basically what I'm trying to, the problem that I'm trying to solve is in which sense these perceptible qualities that is not only in humans but also in eggs, in the example given in the text, how peculiar qualities makes the epistemological discrimination available, in which sense, in which extent. I mean, I think that the idea that psychological qualities or self-consciousness could be one way to make the distinction between two bodies, but I still think that we need, at least for cases like in eggs, for example, to have a broader account, so to speak, that can include those cases.
Don't you think the eggs and the identical twins were brought in by the academics rather than by the Stoics? And the Stoics do face a challenge there. But then the whole theory, in any case, is designed with the model of individual humans in mind. They even use sometimes use the masculine idios poios, making it clear that they're thinking of the human case. I don't think they discuss, or indeed that any ancient philosopher discusses what individuates ants or bees or dogs. It's enough to. I think it's a very Aristotelian mode of argument. You take the paradigm case, human individuality, and then you just work down to lower entities as best you can. Anyway, I'm sorry I've taken up too much of your time, but I still think there will be no clear case where the identification problem and the diachronic identity problem are associated with each other.
Thank you very much, Professor. I'm going to think about it. Thank you.
Well, I have three questions. One of them has to do exactly with the connection between the perceptibility of the idea poietes, no, or of the peculiar quality. What's exactly the relation between the possession of a peculiar quality and its perceptibility? No? My problem is this: is it the idea that in order to know that A and B are different, then each of them, both A and B, must have their own peculiar quality, and this is what allows me to know that they are different. So in this case, the possession of a peculiar quality and its perceptibility is a necessary condition for knowledge, no? For knowledge of the difference. The other way of looking at it, I mean, but that's different from saying that A and B have a peculiar quality only if I can perceive it. No? So I'm not sure that the perceptibility of the quality is a condition for the possession of the quality, right? I mean, it's just a condition for my knowledge of the distinction of the individuals. So but I think that this goes against what you were saying, because you were saying that the perceptibility of the quality is one of the conditions, is one of the defining features of the peculiar quality, no? And so that's one question. Would you like me to ask the other one, or is it? Yes. Okay.
That's what I add, that is perceptible in principle. I mean, provided that you have the skills to identify the quality. The idea that I have here is that you don't have direct access to the peculiar quality, so to speak. You know that. So that's what I say, that it must be like an primitive to some sense. What you must do in order to access, epistemologically access to the peculiar quality, is by their peculiarities, which is what reflects the peculiar quality. The peculiar quality makes each of your parts a peculiarity, so to speak. And it's by accessing to these peculiarities that you can add the peculiar quality.
Right.
Basically.
But still, the possession of peculiarities is not conditional upon my ability to perceive them. No? I mean, it's rather their possession of this idiomata is a necessary condition for me to be able. No, that's the idea. Okay. The other question is this: is that well, you say that it is precisely because Socrates possesses a peculiar qualitative structure that his nose, hair, eyes, and the full array of his parts manifest peculiarity. And then in line with this, you say Socrates' peculiar quality corresponds to what may be described as his intrinsic Socratity. So, but what is the basis of this Socratity? No, I mean, what is it? Is it? I mean, what is it that explains? I mean, what's the ground, no, for this Socratity, or is it a primitive quality, unanalyzable, that only Socrates has? Is that the idea, or is it rather that this Socratity is itself explicable in terms of some more basic feature? No, you seem to treat it as a primitive. Is that correct? And if it is a primitive, then what is it exactly? I mean, how can you analyze it, not in terms of something more basic because it's primitive, but how can you explain what it is? And here I want to exploit one of the ideas that David mentioned, which is, well, could it be, for example, this Socratity a quale, no? A phenomenological property, no, that my awareness that I am myself, no, and which is something that is peculiar to me. I mean, what, no, could it be that? I mean, something that is related to the subjectivity of each person, which is unique to that person, or it's not that, and it's something different. I mean, what is this Socratity?
Actually, my inspiration for this idea has to do with qualia, basically, in the sense that even if you can analyze Socratity of the peculiar quality of each body, it's something that you have a direct perceptual access. That's what I find, I mean, similar in the case of qualia, yeah, because you can analyze them, but you have like introspective access, something like that, but more like by you encounter the face of someone, you can detect. Even if you can say, it's because he has the eyes like this, and the nose like that, and the mouth like that I can say that he's Socrates. It's more like something that you grasp directly in some way.
I mean, first person access to that, yes. Okay.
Something like that. Whether if there's any reason behind this, I think that it must be in a cosmological reason, because at the end of the day, I think that after clarifying what could be a peculiar quality, we then must ask why God makes a cosmos in which not two bodies can share the same peculiar quality. I mean, it could be cosmological reasons or metaphysical reasons behind the idea that two bodies couldn't be identical. Maybe these cosmological reasons can explain why Socrates, what Socrates is, or what is the basis of that Socrates. But still, in the case of in cases of identification, I think that is what's happened, basically. Like a direct access or acquaintance.
Okay, but I mean, is there any evidence for that? For this first person access property, no? This phenomenological property. I mean, is there any evidence for that, or it's just a conjecture that you propose?
It's a conjecture. It's a conjecture. It's a conjecture that I propose as a way to explain how peculiar qualities allows perceptual identification while accepting the possibility of peculiar qualities changing.
Any more questions? Yes, Emanuele.
Thank you, Mr. I was wondering if in this debate, especially in the one concerning the indistinguishable bodies, the finite or infinite duration of the cosmos plays any role, in the sense that in the controversy between Platonists and Stoics, I refer especially to Plutarch. So in the two cases we have to do with two finite, physically finite cosmos. So the cosmos is finite for both of them. So the question is, which I take from a passage from Plutarch, how is it possible within a finite cosmos, both physically and temporally, to have an infinite number of combinations? So paradoxically, when Plutarch refers to the Stoics, he says that there can be an infinite number of combinations, but apparently he does not consider the fact that the Stoic cosmos, each cosmos, is finite. So how is it possible? Did you find anything about that, or does it have nothing to do with this question? Because paradoxically, for a Platonist, if you have an infinite cosmos in terms of duration, you can have an infinite number of combinations. But if the cosmos is both finite, physically and temporally, how is it possible? So you should actually find two identical bodies only in an infinite cosmos. You could find them, but not in a finite one.
As far as I know, I don't see. Yeah. Well, as far as I know, there is no directly connection with this idea, but it has a connection between everlasting recurrence, because this is something that I haven't explored, but it appears in the idea of each peculiar individual appears in each. In this cosmos cycle. And the notion of peculiarly qualified individual is relevant there to say that since this is the principle of individuation, so you're having the same qualities in each cycle, you are exactly the same, they're numerically identical. But that's, as far as I know, the only relevance regarding time. Yes, thank you.
Okay. More question? Edgar?
Thanks a lot, Christian. So just a clarificatory point about the view. So your interpretation is that so Socrates has only one peculiar quality, but somehow this makes other properties or qualities that he has. You talk about peculiarities. So I'm assuming that this term peculiarity is not metaphysical. It's not that they don't become peculiar. It's just that they look peculiar or something like that, because otherwise they would be peculiar qualities as much as his intrinsic peculiar quality, right? I mean, because you need the second part just to solve the epistemological problem. But the metaphysical problem is solved with the idea of the intrinsic peculiar quality, right? And so I'm wondering if that idea, because you talk about peculiarities, but then when you were talking now to Emmanuel, you were saying that a thing changes its peculiar qualities, but that's not true, because, the only peculiar quality that Socrates has is that intrinsic quality, Socrateity. It's something that makes it Socrates, makes it different from everything else. But its snobness, his snobness, it's just, it is not a peculiar quality. It's just that it looks peculiar in virtue of the intrinsic peculiar quality. Otherwise, then you would get into contradiction, right? Yes?
That's the correct demonstration of what
Okay.
I'm trying to say.
Yes, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Very interesting.
Well, if there is nothing more, we thank